So the other day I was at the gym, and this is a gym I used to attend almost every day, so I know a lot of the regulars and familiar faces there. But I get there around 5 or 6 in the morning, and as I'm there, I'm on the leg press, and a woman who I had seen there before comes up to me and wants to work in with me on the leg press. I told her that it's totally fine. Now, as I'm doing my set, she starts getting teary-eyed, wanting to tell me this sob story about how the night before she was at a nightclub, which by the way, meaning a Tuesday night, she was at a nightclub and felt guilty because she had gotten with a guy that one of her friends liked. So she's now having this magical epiphany out of nowhere in the middle of her set on the leg press. And I entertain the conversation somewhat. Again, I don't go to the gym to talk to people who I barely even know for 45 minutes. I'm there to exercise. But as she talks more and more, she makes this comment that I personally took issue with. She said something along the lines of, he was the only good-looking guy there, how all these other guys were average, and they were calling them manlets, calling them short, and saying that she knows what she brings to the table, acting like she's all high and mighty. By the way, this girl's 40 years old almost, average-looking at best, saying stuff like that. So after she said that, that was really the end of the conversation for me. I stopped entertaining it, and she now goes up to someone else, another guy, probably to tell them the same sob story, to use them as a shoulder to cry on. Doing that whole thing all over again. She's not at the gym to work out. And the problem with this is we've all heard this thing of this idea of average men's dating struggles that we hear about, when it really a lot of the time is just men stopped caring, men walking away a lot of the time is what it is. But with women like this, you have to ask yourself, what does a woman like that have in any sense? What does she bring to the table? And what right does she have to even make statements like that of average men and looks and this kind of stuff, when this is an average looking woman who is around 40 years old? These are the kind of women that they expect men to prove themselves to. It does not make any sense. And I'd seen an interview of a woman who was talking about why more people than ever are not in relationships, and she was mentioning the height stuff and in defense of it, saying how women want a guy who's a protector, saying that that's why they want a guy who's 6 foot and above, which that whole idea of protector is just completely false. I'm someone who currently trained jiu-jitsu. I used to wrestle a little bit, and I've trained with D1 college wrestlers, D1 football players. I've trained with judo black belts, jiu-jitsu black belt world champions, and they've ranged in all different kinds of heights, 5'6", 5'7", 6 foot, 6'5", 5'5", all good in their own right. When you even look at a lot of MMA champions, guys that are dominating divisions, a lot of them well below the average height. So that whole idea of man being above 6 foot protector is completely false. Also ask yourself this: if a woman is 5'1", 5'2", 5'3", she's going to be looking up either way. She cannot tell a difference between a guy who's 5'9", 5'10", 6 foot. I remember I was at a restaurant with a friend of mine, and this one waitress shows us a picture of her and her boyfriend who was going to be visiting. He used to also work at the restaurant, and saying that he's 6'5". Meanwhile, this girl's like 4'10". The guy was probably 5'6". A lot of them have no idea what that even looks like. Again, it's just that image. That's what they're concerned about a lot of the time. That image of being with this guy who's 6 foot because that's what their friends want. That's what all their friends want. That's what social media and dating apps tells them they should strive to have. It's just about the image. And notice something too. When it comes to things that women bring up in relationships in terms of what they want and don't want, a lot of the time it's physical things that men have no control over, like height. Or it is status stuff where if anyone's with you for those things, it's purely transactional. That's not real. That's not a real relationship. And whereas when men talk about what they want in a relationship, they mention things like behavior, loyalty, trust. Is this a woman who I could introduce to my parents? Is this a woman who I could raise a family with? Those are the kind of things that men bring up. Like even myself, anytime I've interacted with someone in general, I don't care if they're a fast food worker. I don't care if they are a delivery driver. I don't care about all that status stuff. I care about who they are as a person. I don't care if they have 1 follower or 100,000 followers. I don't care. Women have fallen in love with the world, and they're never going to be happy. They're never going to settle because they always think that there is some next best thing. That is regardless of how they look. You got propped up women who are mids. You got women who are, I guess in a general sense, below average in terms of looks, who think that they're entitled to this man that, quite frankly, does not exist. The whole social media thing is something where I think obviously it's done damage to both men and women, but in different ways. I myself barely get on social media. I have notifications off. The only reason I even have it on my phone is to talk to a buddy of mine who's in another country where I'd have to pay fees to text or call him. But I have notifications off when I gather. I'm not scrolling through reels. I'm not scrolling through stories. And you can even look at the data on this. A lot more women are on social media, much more traffic from women than men. And it's done way more damage to women in terms of relationships, especially because with the hypergamy stuff, women now see this. They see the world. They see all these things that they want to compare and strive to have. They're never going to be happy. They're going to want the next best thing, this whole grass is greener mentality. I remember I saw a video a while back, and I think this video kind of circled around the internet, but it was of a woman who was claiming to be Instagram famous. By the way, a woman whose whole body really was full of plastic. Lips done, nose done, body sculpting clothing, wearing a ridiculous amount of makeup. Talking down to this family on this plane, saying that she's Instagram famous and million followers, which very well might have been bought or paid for just like the rest of her body. Talking down to these people on the plane. And ask yourself, are these the sorts of women that we're supposed to want to date or take seriously? Really, there's a beauty in humility, in being humble, in a natural look. A 7 or 8 with a whole ton of makeup is, to me, below average. It's average at best. That needs to be put out there too. You have a lot of men who feel like they're not good enough for whatever reason. And then you have women that are wearing ridiculous amounts of makeup. They're having work done to their body. These aren't the kind of women that men should think they're beneath. Another thing too is men need to start lifting up one another, because I've seen this too where men will say these kind of statements of, oh, well, you're not 6 foot, you're not good enough, and you don't have a shot with her. Those aren't the kind of people that you should want in your circle. But why are you propping up women like this? Why are you propping up women like that? Seriously. That whole thing is just something I'll never understand. But I want to talk about something too, because I was thinking about this earlier. I happened to see this clip from the movie Toy Story that a lot of you guys probably watched at some point in your life, right? I mean, the movie's almost a little more than 30 years old, which it's wild to think that it's been 30 years, right? We had Kmart, Sears, Blockbuster. But there's a scene in that movie, actually a pretty powerful scene, where Buzz is thinking that he's a space ranger, right? And he's trying to jump and leap and fly and thinking that he's going to be like he saw on this television, when he's been told that he is, which he is, a toy. And he falls and finds out that he is indeed a toy. He's not a space ranger. He's not something that he, indeed isn't. He was humbled. Whereas with women nowadays, which I'm not saying this because both are full of plastic, sadly, a lot of them. My point being with that is, you have women who could be rejected 100 out of 100 times by this chad guy that they're looking for. And they would still think they're this upper echelon, top shelf woman that is better than every single man around them. The level of just not living in reality is it's unthinkable. It's unthinkable. And I'm going to say something too to the men out there. Anyone who feels like you're not good enough, do not let women like this, do not let people like this make you feel like you're subpar. Make you feel like there's anything wrong with you, whether you're average or whatever. And if you're someone who's not happy with the way you look, go to the gym. Fine. But I see people going through way too many extremes to try to impress women like this. I was having a conversation with someone who is below average height. I think he's around 5'7". And he was seriously considering getting this limb lengthening surgery. And I told him, like, dude, number one, the height suits him. The other thing is, why would you want to do something like that just to appease a woman like this who, let's look at the reality. severe lack of loyalty and commitment. I'm not going to play that court jester game. I think it's good to have well-fitting clothing, wear a good fragrance, go to the gym, but not go overboard with it. Not be like these women who are getting lips done and nose done and all this kind of stuff. I was even at CVS the other day, and I had seen a woman who was probably in her early 20s who was working there. And it looked like she literally had a stack of books behind her, did not fit the rest of her body. And I've seen it more now than ever of women getting work done to themselves. And they're just ruining themselves. They're absolutely ruining themselves at a young age. At a young age. I mean, I'm talking women who are as young as 19, 20 years old getting Botox and lip fillers and stuff like that. It was never like that when I was growing up. It was never like that when I was that age. That was not a thing. But again, it's this social media hypergamy stuff. It's wanting to be something that you're not. And these are women who naturally looked fine the way they were, and they're just destroying their bodies. They're just absolutely destroying their bodies. It's, and I see people that want to defend this kind of stuff, that want to defend this whole idea of average man. Just do your thing. That's really where I'm at right now. Focus on yourself, focus on your mission and your purpose. And of course, there are things you can do to impress yourself. Yes, improve yourself and impress others. Although you shouldn't live for the approval of other people. But there are things that you can physically do. But don't go overboard with it, and don't live for the approval of women. Have some self-respect. Like, I got a couple friends of mine who are below average height, and they have no problem getting attention from women. But they also know how out of control the dating market is nowadays, and they're not wanting to commit to these women because they've shown that, like I mentioned with the behavior stuff, they're not women that you can introduce to your parents, to your family, that you'd want to bring home and have at the dinner table across from your father or mother. Like even the body count stuff too. Women that'll openly talk about that. That is just not something that should come out of a woman's mouth, you ask me personally. High body count is a big, major red flag because it goes to show that you had to be with so many different guys and you still were never able to settle. That goes to show you probably had a bunch of red flags. You have no respect for yourself. And women that are now in their 30s wanting to settle down. Women, like I mentioned earlier in the video, 40 years old, thinking they want to live this lifestyle. How long are you going to live it for? Until you're 50, 60, 70? It doesn't make any sense. I even saw a clip someone sent me of, you guys ever seen those videos where they have the table and the red button on them and someone pushes it if they're completely done with the interaction? And it was a woman who was 32, and she said that she was too young to have kids. And the guy asked her age, she said she was 32, and he hit that button. I'm thinking to myself, this woman is 32 and waiting to settle down, waiting to have kids. What are you waiting for? And again, I know that there are circumstances of widows and stuff like that, but generally speaking, if a woman is above the age of 30 especially and has not settled down, to me, that is also a major red flag. That shows that she probably does have high body count. And another thing too, with when it comes to baggage and mileage and stuff like that, women shouldn't have a bunch of baggage. They should not. Men are generally the ones that are going to have the harder lives. Women should not have gone through all these breakups, relationships, and this kind of stuff. That's not at all something that a woman should go through. Again, think back to what this whole thing with average men not being able to get dates. You think men in general, average or not, are going to want to date women like that? You think that's conducive for a long-lasting, healthy relationship? Because I'll tell you right now, it's not. It's just not. And more we see it. It's out there with the internet. And people are wise to it now. They're wise to it now. So when I see men who are not putting focus on dating anymore, I totally understand why. Because there is no trust, because there is no commitment. And, men obviously have responsibilities. They have things they need to focus on. They don't have time for these tests and trials from your own girlfriend. That doesn't make any sense. But as always, guys, I appreciate you for viewing the video. And just a point I wanted to make here, because with this conversation, it just got me thinking about how a woman who is average looking, which I'm not saying it would be any better if she was some model or something like that, with that kind of mindset, that entitled mindset, it wouldn't be any better. But it's just so bizarre to me seeing a woman in that position where you'd think she should have wanted to settle down, to have kids, still acting like that, still talking like that. It's a prime example of why men are opting to stay single. So, as always, guys, I appreciate you viewing the video. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you.